Hi all, welcome to Adventures in Astronomy. My name is Martin. I hope you are coping with the sweltering conditions. I'm not. I've carefully positioned myself today. I'm wearing shorts. If I showed you my knees, I'd be too scared that some of you would faint due to the lardy complexion of them. So we're going to get straight on today. And I'm going to show you an image on the screen. In fact, two images of the Orion Nebula. So there are two side-by-side images on screen, and I want us to play a little bit of a game this week. I want you to tell me which image you prefer. So this week we're looking at SyQon's Parallax. Now, just full disclaimer here, SyQon have sent me this software free of charge to test, and I've agreed to show you my testing. There is a 5% discount code in the description if you want to buy the software, but they have no editorial say on this video. My thoughts are my own 100%, and you'll see I've got some fairly surprising conclusions to make actually. Now, for some of you, the image on the left feels quite smooth, and the image on the right feels like there's an extra bit of pop going on there. Can you guess which image is SyQon Parallax? Can you guess which image is BlurXTerminator? Well, the image on the right is Parallax, and the image on the left is BlurXTerminator. Just to talk about what I'm going to do in this week's video, I've got a whole load of data up, and some of these images are old. This is quite old data. I've got images that were taken under bad seeing. I've got images that were taken when I was a young astrophotographer, and I've got images that were taken where I've got more experience. And the reason I've done that is I wanted to test this new piece of software under very different conditions, because some of you out there are just starting out, some of you are really experienced. So let's look a little bit more on screen. So this image was taken a lot of years ago. That's how I originally did it. That image of the Orion Nebula here was actually taken before any of these processes existed, and it was a very long and laborious process, I can tell you that. I managed to get a fair bit of detail out of it. There are a few things that are not great about it, but this is sort of classic Orion Nebula data. And let's start with the really great news first for Parallax. I'm quite blown away by what it's done on this image. If we just zoom in a little bit onto the Orion Nebula and just look at this area here and just compare it to BlurXTerminator, you can see that it's pulled out some incredible pieces of images. I'm not entirely 100% certain how Parallax works because I'm not a software programmer, but here on the website it talks about using physics-compliant, gated, coordinated-aware residual regression network. Whatever that means, I believe it's not AI. So both tools are working differently. What Parallax has done, though, in this image is very impressive. It's brought out details that are not quite there in the BlurXTerminator version. It works slightly differently on the stars as well. I've got to say, all the way through, I do prefer how BlurXTerminator deals with stars myself. You may find that you prefer the slightly soft-looking version of Parallax, but if the YouTube compression algorithm isn't getting in the way, as good as Parallax is, you may have noticed a slight issue between these images. And that is, on the Parallax version, we've got this slightly mottled looking effect here, which is not present on the BlurXTerminator. So it's not the data, it's a software. So it's done brilliantly in terms of how it looks. Now, if we just go into the SyQon Parallax script, what you have here are a couple of settings. You can increase the star reduction here. You can play around with the tile setting and the padding. What I've been experimenting with over the last couple of weeks is changing the overlap. And so what I did over here is a version where I made the overlap stronger. And if we go to the same area you can see that mottle effect has certainly died down quite a bit, and it now looks a lot smoother. So our first image, I would say, goes to Parallax in my eyes. But A/B testing, what do you feel? Now, one thing I do want to add is a couple of weeks ago, I did a video on SyQon's Prism. The Prism is basically the equivalent of Noise Exterminator. And I did put Prism on the Parallax version, and we got an even better response. Let me just put that on there. So what Prism does is it tidies up the noise, but it does do a contrast enhancement. Some of you may like that, some of you don't. For me, it depends on the image. But now compared side by side, so let's go 2 steps before. That is it in its natural state. That's it with Parallax added, and that's it with Prism added. And you can see with that process, it really pops and it looks lovely. I think our eyes are going to have to get used to all this fantastic software that we've been given, because we're not used to seeing details quite as sharp as what we're seeing. So does it look over-processed? Tell me in the comments, what do you think? Okay, let's move on to the second image. Now, this is an old image of the Orion Nebula. And again, it's fairly old data. It's not perfect data. You can see I didn't quite control the gradients too well. I think I took this about 4 years into my astrophotography journey. What I remember being particularly happy with here is this core, and I'd done quite a lot of work on there to bring a nice core out. So that was the final image. Now I've zoomed in a little bit, and this time, let's play the game again. Which one is BlurXTerminator? Which one is Parallax? What do you think? Well, maybe if we listened earlier about the stars, you've got a slight giveaway. This time, the one on the right is BlurXTerminator, and the one on the left is Parallax. And again, you can see with the Parallax, we've just got this larger definition going on in the structured details, but at the expense that the stars are still a little bit soft. But certainly around this area, we've got some lovely definition. So again, it works on pretty average data, and it works really well. Only you can decide which one you like. There is a smoothness, I think it's fair to say, with BlurXTerminator that is really nice, that I don't think Parallax has as much. And certainly if we just zoom them both out, you can't tell too much difference on this. So there is a difference between sort of the overall image. If we just go back to the Orion Nebula, at that scale, it looks really impressive for Parallax. At the zoomed out scale, not too much difference. The stars are certainly a lot more prominent in Parallax. Let's go to some more data. Now, this data wasn't mine, it was given to me, but this is the Tarantula Nebula, and that was pretty much my final image. I think I've got one where I put the stars back in, but it's a lovely, lovely data. So that was the final image. And I've zoomed in a little bit, and again, which one is which? Well, I can tell you the one on the left is BlurXTerminator, and the one on the right is Parallax. If we just go to the BlurXTerminator one and just go before, all I've done is color calibrated all of these images. I haven't done any processing at all on any of them. That was before, and you can see the typical thing with BlurXTerminator, it snaps into focus. And on the right with Parallax, it's done just as good a job. If anything, it's done a slightly better job with some of the structures. So if we just copy across this view and just have a look at this structure here, you can see it's slightly sharpened it. But I would say on this version, personally, I prefer BlurXTerminator because it's done the same thing, but it just feels a bit more natural, a bit sharper. On the right, it's introduced some sort of form of blockiness. And I've tested Parallax on quite a lot of images, about 20 images before I made this video. And what I found is on some images, like the Orion Nebula, it was incredible. On other images, it sort of introduces a slightly blocky artifact, which I actually found with Prism as well, with the noise structure. SyQon are working on version 3, they've told me, of this software, which hopefully will be a refinement. But on this version, I prefer BlurXTerminator. I think it's done a better job. So that's interesting because this is narrowband data. Let's move on to our fourth image. And this is not great data. This was taken years ago. It's obviously the Crescent Nebula. It's got hydrogen alpha. It's got oxygen 3 in it. I can't remember whether I did RGB stars. I suspect I probably didn't, looking at that image. But it's not a fantastic photo. It's an okay image. If I was redoing that again today, I'd take it in better seeing. You can see from the stars there, not taken on a great night. So again, let's just pause again and ask, which one is which? Which one do you think is BlurXTerminator and which one is Parallax? I can reveal that the one on the left is BlurXTerminator and the one on the right is Parallax. There's less difference to my eyes between these two, but again, I'm going to give the win to BlurXTerminator on this just because it's made a slightly sharper, slightly smoother image than Parallax has. So it's kind of interesting here because the first two images were broadband targets. And the last two images, where Parallax has not fared quite as well, have been narrowband targets. In all of the testing that I've done to date, with Parallax, we're definitely seeing a pattern where it works brilliantly on broadband targets, but narrowband targets, BlurXTerminator is, I think, personally still ahead. And let's go to our final image. This is newer data. You can see, or to my eyes, this was taken last year. This is me now after 10 years of imaging experience, and I personally think this is a fairly good image compared to some of the others. So this would be results that we would see with fairly experienced imaging, and we've got a broadband target mixed in with hydrogen alpha data on this. So let's see how Parallax and BlurXTerminator fare on this one. So take a look at both. Which one is which, do you think? Well, the one on the left is Parallax and the one on the right is BlurXTerminator. And on this one, I think there's a very clear winner, or at least there is to my eyes. Not wearing glasses tonight. BlurXTerminator on the right is, to my eyes, much better, much sharper. Parallax on the left actually has not done a good job. I think it's done a really poor job on this one. Could it be that hydrogen alpha data is throwing it out? Who knows? So we come to conclusions. And what I would say is Parallax is a great piece of software, but it's still pretty new and it's still going through refinements. And as I said earlier, version 3 is on its way. But SyQon have achieved an awful lot in a very short space of time, and it's quite exciting to see new software coming out. Would I buy Parallax with my own money at this minute in time? Perhaps. Would I choose it over BlurXTerminator? Probably not. BlurXTerminator, to my mind, has worked over quite a few years now, over quite a number of images, and it's done fantastic in every image. It's never let us down. But I do go back to this original image on the Orion Nebula, and I love what it's done there. And I think there's enormous potential. It did really well in the Iris Nebula as well. So I'm excited to see how this software grows in version 3 and beyond. And who knows, with more development, I do think Parallax could end up being the overall winner in time. Who knows? Maybe BlurXTerminator will begin to get some updates. Now, which one do you prefer? I'm really interested in your views, genuinely interested. I'd love to get some debate going down below in the comments section. Let me know. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I hope you've enjoyed the comparison. If you want to buy Parallax, like I said, use the code, get 5% off. It's definitely something that I'm glad I've got in my toolbox. I will definitely be using it on each image, and I suspect in broadband targets especially, it might even be my tool of choice. What do you think? My name's Martin. You've been watching Adventures in Astronomy. See you next time.